Let me back up and start over again. I am here with Joe Federico, our newest employee. He is our compliance coordinator. He'll be working with you throughout the grant year on various aspects. If you have any questions during the year about things you need to be doing or with your grant, then feel free to contact either him or me. And I think either one of us should be able to handle any of your questions. So to get started, the grant year is October 1st through September 15th. That means all of your expenses need to be in that time period, have occurred during that time period. One of the things that or several things that are changing from previous years is that reimbursements will be filed online. They will be done through the same system where you did your application. That's going to be on a quarterly payment schedule. And with your quarterly reimbursement request, you're going to also have a brief quarterly organization status report. It's very simple. The reason why we're going to a quarterly payment schedule, some of you may be aware, some may not be, that this grant program is funded by the county. The county gives us our money as we spend it. So very much like you, we do not get this money up front. So when you file a reimbursement request, we are paying you, so to speak, up front and then getting our money later from the county. This creates quite a cash flow problem for us if everybody waits to the last minute to request their money. And so in order to better handle our cash flow, we're going to try this quarterly payment system. And you'll be able to, we'll get into that a little bit more in detail shortly. That's the main thing that's changed from previous years for those of you who have been grantees. Unchanged is the insurance requirement. That's the same. Advocacy report, which we started last year, is the same. And final report is the same. And listing your events on Arts Tampa Bay, that's still the same. With regard to the insurance requirement, all of you have already filed your $1 million liability insurance policy with us. Please take note of your expiration date and send that to us when it expires. The easiest thing to do is to ask your insurance company to automatically email the renewal certificate to us. If you are doing that yourself, you can send it to, or they can, to Joe at jfederico@tampaarts.org. It's the same as last year. If you have an expired certificate, we will not be able to process your reimbursement request. The same as last year is listing your events, your classes, programs, shows on Arts Tampa Bay. If you have not done that before, then get in touch with me. I'll send you a user guide that will step through that for you to start an account. These listings are free, and we promote them on your behalf on Arts Tampa Bay, in our newsletters, social media, and this feed also goes to a couple of our sister organizations in the Bay Area. Unchanged is giving credit for support. As we've talked about before, this helps give our program some visibility, also helps to explain why funding is important and the kind of organizations that county funding is supporting. When you acknowledge the funding that you're receiving from us, you need to do that on your website, your media releases, print, electronic collateral, curtain speeches, etc. First preference is to use logos. If you cannot use logos, there is a text statement that you can use. When you give credit for the support, First preference is the logos, and those logos, I believe most of you got emails from me, need to be the two you see on your screen for Arts Council in Hillsborough County of Florida. Do not use the Hillsborough County logo that has the little circular graphic in it. And they are strict in checking all of that. I get emails from them regularly. Next up is the arts advocacy. This is the same as it was last year. You will need to fill out a report, give us a copy of the letters or emails that you sent regarding funding. Excuse me. This, I suggest you start with a letter to the county commissioners who provide the funding for your program. You can do this with a simple thank you. I urge you to take advantage of this opportunity to tell them about your program. Last year, when they got their letters from everyone, we did hear back from them that they, one, were surprised to get them and appreciated them, but also that several of them found organizations they were not aware of that were in their own districts, and they plan to start going to some of the events. So it is good for you to start out with a thank you, and then tell them your money this year is helping to support our program, and this year we are planning to present XYZ, and then invite them to come to the program. These advocacy reports are going to be due by January 15th. If you have them now, I know some of you do, go ahead and scan your letters and fill out your report and email it to Joe or to me. Those forms for the advocacy reports are on tampaarts.org on the Cultural Development Grant site. Next up is the final report. Those of you who just did a final report for last year, you'll find that it is pretty much the same. That report is also available on tampaarts.org. Important to note is that your quarter 4 reimbursement will not be paid if you have not submitted your final report. So you want to stay on top of that. Now, changes to the grant agreement. If you need to make a change to your grant agreement, someone has left, a contact person is changing, you want to submit a change request. That change request could be for budget, for address. We'll review the request, notify you if we need to make an amendment to the grant agreement. You download that change request from tampaarts.org and email it to me or to Joe. Now we're going to get into some of the specifics on the reimbursement payments, and I'm going to let Joe take over at this point.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Federico. The reimbursement payments will be made through the online system, and they will be done on a quarterly schedule. So, for instance, the period of October through December, you will have them through the end of January to submit that online. Only expenses incurred and paid during that quarter can be reimbursed. And again, you can submit your request, and the related documentation can be uploaded as well. And must be within that 30-day period after the end of the quarter. And of course, the last quarter is due a little earlier by September 15th, and that's in keeping with the fiscal budget of the county NRM. This is just an example of what grant funds can be expended for. Your Exhibit B1 that you submitted to us outlines what you were allocating for. They include salary support, and those are people who are employees, W-2 employees. The consultant fees, 1099, professional services, production costs, venue rentals, any marketing, and there's very certain types of travel. And again, they're all going through the online system. You've all logged in and you've all submitted your application through there. The invoice for reimbursement is going to be the same as last year, except now it's just on the computer. You still have those, I believe it's 9 categories, and that's supported by the invoice detail worksheet, which itemizes each of those costs. Then the organization status report, I believe, is just a brief report on that. And of course, there's the area where you can upload all your expense documentation. And this is a pretty important part. This is where we submit this as well to the county. And anyone who's dealt with me the last couple of months, I know I can be pretty tough about getting all the proper documentation, but it all paid off because nothing ever got kicked back, and so that way there's no delay in getting your money to you. And also, if you do not have a reimbursement for the quarter, you will have to go online, and there's a checkbox on the reimbursement page that you'll have to check and sign off on that you're not claiming anything for that quarter. Here's a summary of the reimbursement period. The first quarter up to 25%, the second quarter up to 50%, 75% for the third quarter, and then finally 100% for the last quarter, and that must be accompanied by the final report. And this is just an example. So, for instance, if your grant was for $12,000, just list the maximum amounts that you can claim for that quarter. And if anyone does have any questions, if you want to type them in the chat box, we can possibly address them as we go along, and of course we could answer them just in case we didn't see them after this is completed. This is just a snapshot of your reimbursement request. You can see it really hasn't changed all that much, except now it's on the computer. It will fill out your Exhibit B1 budget for any one of the 9 categories. It will auto-populate your reimbursements to date within that category, and then that third, or actually it's the fourth column, current request, is what you're requesting for that quarter. That is the first page of that, and when you click the next button, it'll summarize what you've requested. And in the grant payments received to date, that is one thing that you will have to put in from your records what you've received to date. We'll cross-check that here. Then that'll give you your total for the grant claimed at that point. You can sign this with your mouse or your touchscreen if you have one, and then all that has to be filled in, your date signed and your name and title, and then you can mark that as complete. We do have a question here. If a payment is made in a quarter, but the check is not deposited until the subsequent quarter, is that amount still eligible for reimbursement?
Sure.
Not still eligible for reimbursement. We'll have to get back to you on that one there. It's a good question. There is a 30-day window for that, though. So in most cases, that may not come up. And here just shows you have the 3 dots in the upper right corner there. That allows you to download your reimbursement payment that you filled out. It also allows you to reset. Reset basically deletes everything that you've entered, And of course, edit means just that. You can go back in and make changes as you need. And your invoice detail worksheet, you're going to have who your payee is, your check number, your check amount, and the grant funds applied towards it. In most cases, it's going to equal your check amount. And then there's a drop-down box with each of the 9 categories that you can select from one of those. You may have to use there's a horizontal scroll bar at the bottom here to scroll back and forth, because prior to the column to the left of payee is the date column. And this is at the bottom of that page. It will add up all your grant funds that you're requesting for that period. If you're not done, you can just hit save and continue editing, or you can, if you are done, you can hit mark as complete. In some cases too, if you want to keep a running tally of what's going on for the quarter, you can hit save and continue editing and just not mark as complete, and then come back to it later on during that quarter if you have more things to add to it. Your organization status report is going to need the current number of paid and unpaid administrative staff and creatives. You're going to list your quarter's performances and events, and there's going to be a checklist confirming compliance, and that's going to make sure that your insurance is up to date, that you've been posting of the events on the calendar website, and that the proper credit and acknowledgement to the Arts Council and the Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners has been given. Here's examples of the supporting documentation to verify those expenses which you're claiming reimbursement for. For invoices, you need cancel checks, both the front and back, copies of that with bank statements. If you have W-2 employees, the employment contract or letter of agreement for W-2. We will request payroll ledgers and copies of bank statements showing that the withdrawal amount for those. Marketing expenses, copies of any printed brochures, flyers, advertisements, showing the required credit for funding. If you have any questions as to how many of those you need to submit or upload, just give a call here. Okay. And this shows a completed upload of documentation. And this one has got about 7 here. And all of these, again, when you're finished with all these little stages here of your reimbursement, there's a mark as complete. Nothing gets finalized to us at this point. You can still go back and edit that part so far. This is the last stage of that reimbursement for the quarter. As you'll see, the 4 items here are green with a check mark in them, and it'll say forecast complete. At that point, you can hit the review and submit, and that will bring you to another screen where you can actually review everything again before marking as complete. And here's that stage right now, submitting the reimbursement request. Once you see your quarter 1 reporting is at the bottom. There's a little chevron. If you click that, that will expand down and will show you exactly what you've submitted so far. When you do hit the submit, it says submit your application. You're actually submitting your quarterly reimbursement request. When you do click that, this request is no longer editable, so it will get forwarded to us as such. And then when you get back out to your to the main screen on the online grant system, it will show that it has been submitted, and it will allow you to view. It'll leave you with a status of pending. It's requested for record keeping that you maintain all your documentation for 3 years. It includes the original invoices, canceled checks, contracts, programs, any evidence of matching funds. We don't require you to submit evidence of matching funds with your reimbursement request, but we do require that you maintain that in your file. And of course, for ease, if you maintain that separately, just in case that there's any question or in case of an audit. And all revenue related to the agreement should be recorded as well. By now, you should have access to the Grant Administration Manual, which is online at tampaarts.org. There's our phone number right there, 813-276-8250. And for the most part, for reimbursement and items of that, probably be directed towards me. When in terms of advocacy and publishing your events, Terry would probably take the lead on that.
So I also just want to say, if you're making any changes to the programs that you offer, that's major in comparison to what your application stated. You'll also need to call me regarding that and possibly fill out a change request. To go back to the question about payment made in a quarter, but the check is not deposited until the subsequent quarter, let me clarify that the period of time we're talking about in the case of the first quarter is October 1 through December 31st. So if the expense was incurred and paid during that time period, you have until January 31st to file for reimbursement. So hopefully you will have your canceled checks back by that time. Typically what I've seen in the past is that might happen more with individuals, let's say contractors, 1099s, that they hold on to a check and don't deposit it for some reason. You need to impress upon those people that you need to have them deposit that check so that you can process your own finances with us for the grant. Trying to read another question. The expenses that I applied for in my grant will be finished before the fourth quarter. Can the final request in the fourth quarter include expenses from the third quarter? No, typically that is not something that we would allow. If you have an issue with that kind of thing and the periods of time where you have expenses or most of your expenses, you need to get in touch with us. But otherwise, you will need to manage your own expenditures so that they are broken up into the 4 quarters. Cindy, I'm looking at a very tiny screen here, sorry. If you have already done your event for the quarter and have no other events for the quarter, can I apply now? You can fill out your paperwork, however, we will not be processing reimbursements until 30 days after the quarter ends. So if you've already done your event, let's say for the quarter 1, and you've filled out your paperwork, we are going to process that during January. If that's an undue hardship on your organization, you need to get in touch with me, and we'll talk about some of that. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing other questions, so I guess we'll wrap this up. I hope that this has been productive for you doing it this way. It's a little bit more awkward than when we meet in person. But if you have any follow-up questions, please email me or email Joe. We'll be able to answer those, I'm sure. Give us a call. We'll talk about those on the phone if you find that easier. And otherwise, I hope that you all have a great day.